laser beam frog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any ideas, Ben?
Not really.
I get a bit lost in this one.
I'm feeling forest dwelling.
Forest dwelling.
Yeah.
Good start.
I'm feeling sort of mid-story forest, so maybe some sort of like hyla.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's not Hyla, but keep going.
We'll go for the mewing tree frog.
No. So this is in fact the Tungara frog,
Oh.
Engistomops pustulosus.
Tungara frog. Didn't we talk about
Yep.
them like a few episodes ago?
We have talked about them. Yes, we have talked about them. So
What were they up
we'll get
to?
into that before. Well, so
What's their deal? Where are they? Let me
okay,
at 'em.
so yeah, they are. So they're actually from Costa Rica, Ben. But this wasn't my call. I didn't record
I
this
kind of
one.
knew there
This
was a
one
Costa Rican one coming, but I don't know any frogs from Costa Rica, and I've not had the time to look up all the thousands of frogs that live in Costa Rica.
See, yeah, this is the thing, Ben. You got to make that time because otherwise you're never going to get ahead. 2-2, and look, you've frittered away another chance to go ahead in a virtually impossible
no
game.
way I would have listened to any number of frog calls from Costa Rica and be like, oh yeah, that's the one I remember him well. Sounds like a laser
I know,
beam.
yeah. I just feel like you'd have to work so hard to memorize them. Anyway, so this was sent in by a friend of mine called Ben Wilkie. He's an ecologist and he was in Costa Rica, so he sent this with a message. First night in Costa Rica, got settled in Liberia, went for a stroll to grab some beers and practice some bad Latin American. A few drinks later, walking through some marshy fields, and I heard this pew noise, so I made the noise back. This went back and forth a few times until the whole field had erupted into froggy pew pew noises, giggling my ass off in a field of these wonderful frogs. And yeah, Tungara frog, Engistoma pustulosus. So yeah, thanks for sending that one in, Ben. And yeah, this Tungara frog, so the name is actually onomatopoeically derived from the male's call. Tun is the wine and Gara are the two chucks. So it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a stretch that, but they apparently people hear Tun, and then I guess Gara is the two little like chip bits.
All right.
But anyway.
Yeah, a little bit of a stretch, but it's all right.
Yeah.
I've heard worse.
It's not quite, hear it again, like, do you hear that? Like, and then got it.
Yeah, I know, I hear it. No, that's okay. I think that works. Now it's in my head. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a species of frog in the family Leptodactylidae. It's small, it's nocturnal, it's terrestrial. It lives in Mexico, Central America, and northeastern South America. And there's some cool stuff about their calls, actually. So the male vocalizations are really important in female mate choice, and females actually prefer males who give complex mating calls at a lower frequency rather than simple calls at a high frequency, which is interesting because like they prefer the deeper calls as well as the sort of more complex ones. And you remember when those tortoises associated deeper sounds with larger things?
Yes. Oh,
yeah. So the frogs are essentially doing that. So the deeper the call, it suggests that it's like resonating from a larger male, and so that is actually crucial in female mate choice. They want the bigger males, and scientists have worked out that the reason for that is because bigger males, the females are actually bigger in this species. So the bigger the male is, the better he is able to like basically hold on to this whopping giant female while they're mating. While they're copulating, and the bigger males have like higher success of fertilizing the eggs as they come out of the female because they're better able to like hang on and be in the right place. So yeah, very interesting.
Interesting. So a
bigger
genuine,
is better in Tungaras.
Honest signal because of the sort of mechanics required to make the call.
Precisely, and it actually goes even further than that. So the females prefer these deeper and more complex calls, but they do come with a cost for the males because if they make these deeper, more complex calls, they also attract the attention of frog-eating bats, which are Trachops cirrhosus, and blood-sucking flies, which are in the genus Corothrella. And these two other species, one of which predates this frog and the other one will be a parasite of this frog, they also both prefer complex calls when they're played to them in a lab. So if the frogs are making more noise making these calls, the cost is they're more observed by predators and parasites, but the females find it sexier. So it's a trade-off, and apparently because of this, the males themselves will actually switch between the two types of calls quite frequently. So they're sort of like, they're bet hedging, essentially.
Hedging their bets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Which is pretty cool. So yeah.
Yes. And that ties in nicely to previous stuff that we've covered, where you get rid of those predators in urban environment, and it allows them to change their call and sort of swing more over to one call type or another call type depending on environment, essentially. Yeah.
Yep.
Fascinating.
And things like this are probably also responsible for captivity calls changing as well. Like they're probably, you can imagine. But anyway, so you remembered this Tingara frog. Something went off in your brain. There's a flicker of recognition, and the reason is because this is the frog which has the symbiotic or mutualistic relationship with tarantulas in Mexico. So there's that genus of tarantulas, Aphonophpelma, and these Tingara frogs, hang out in log hollows with those tarantulas, and it's thought that the frog protects the spider's eggs from ants, because the spiders can't smash the ants because their legs are not dexterous enough. And the frog benefits because the spider will protect it from predators.
So that's just a smart frog. That's a smart deal.
Smart frog, smart spider.
So here we have a frog that is adapting its call, sort of honest signaling, sounding kind of cool as well, onomatopoeic name, working with spiders. I mean, I'm impressed. I'm genuinely impressed by this frog.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm also impressed how much we know about this frog. Normally when we do Species of the Bye Week, this frog doesn't even have a common name. You're just like, what do I say about it? But this one, what the heck? There's all sorts going on.
Good choice.
So yeah, really nice species.
I suppose excellent having something sent in.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks again, Ben Wilkie. Let's move on, shall we, to our paper. So here we have a paper by Alves-Nunes, Fellone, Almeida-Santos, Medeiros, Sazima, and Marques, published in Scientific Reports in 2024. So this is hot off the press. Study of defensive behavior of a venomous snake as a new approach to understand snakebite. Bang! What a title.
Yeah,
high expectations.
So this is something that we can tend to sort of touch on every now and again. Is if you chat about snakes, eventually you do have to talk about snakebite to some level. This is perhaps one of the more sort of comprehensive papers we've done with snakebite when it's looking at a specific species anyway. Because so in the intro they sort of highlight that there's all these different aspects, environmental factors, species, snake attitudes, that play into likelihood of snake biting. And this whole paper's trying to get a handle on what drives the bite sort of propensity, the probability of a bite in this one species of pit viper. Who have they got? They've got Bothrops
jararaca. Bothrops jararaca, which is the... what's the common name of that one? I've got terciopelo in my head, but that's not... what do they call this common name of this one? Lancehead. Oh, right. That's what they call it. Lancehead, yeah. And so, yeah, common, well-camouflaged pit viper. Like you say, it's found in southern Brazil, Paraguay, northern Argentina, and it is responsible for most of the 26,000 recorded snake bites in Brazil each year, so that's why they picked it. This one is one of the species where the juveniles use the caudal lure, so when they're babies, they have the little white tail, and they wiggle it, and that is like a little worm. Birds or lizards come and eat that. Gives birth to live young, up to 40 babies, so, things which are giving birth to 40 babies can become quite common, and they also love eating rodents when they're adults, so they're attracted to human habitation because there are rodents. And
it's kind of the classic, isn't it? Rodents. It's kind of the classic venomous snake bumping into people sort of problem.
Yeah. And snake bite is a global issue. It affects a lot of people worldwide, but this one is the sort of most medically significant in Brazil specifically. And the venom itself has hemorrhagic proteins, so it gives people what is known as consumptive coagulopathy, which is where all your clotting factors in your blood are destroyed by venom proteins, so your blood loses its capacity to clot. So you've got blood that won't clot, and then this combines with another protein in the venom which causes bleeding from your capillaries. And so you have all these tiny little bleeds from your capillaries and no capacity for your capillaries to clot, so you begin to bleed from everywhere, every orifice, blood's coming out. Terrible, really horrible fate. Luckily, there is good antivenom and it does work very effectively, but you need to be able to get it, of course. Snakebite is a disease of rural communities, so often, it's more common and it's exacerbated by being rural. So yeah, provided people can get to medical treatment, this is good antivenom. Not always the case, and the venom wreaks havoc on the body. It can take weeks to recover, and there is often lasting damage to the liver and kidneys. So this snake's no joke. The flip side of that is that the venom from Bothrops jararaca has actually been developed into several drugs, ACE inhibitors, which are used for the treatment of high blood pressure. So that's something good that's come out of the venom. But yeah, as you said, Ben, what this paper was fundamentally trying to do is understand the issue of snakebite, but from the perspective of the snake itself, really.
Yes.
Like, are there things which make this snake more likely to bite that foot?
Yeah. And that's what the whole setup of this, but the core of this paper is they had 116 snakes of varying ages and sexes, and they did a contact stimulus, is what they call it, which is gently stepping on them with some boots, and basically stepping near the head, stepping near the mid-body, and stepping near the tail, and recording the sort of likelihood of bite, whether they bit or not, and then from that you can work out the likelihood of bite. And they also did the same with the non-contact stimulus, which was a same boot that was within 5 centimeters of those same body parts, but not onto the snake, and see how that compared.
Yeah, so you tread near the snake, near its head, near its mid-body, near its tail, or you tread on its head, mid-body, or tail.
Gently.
Gently. And they were measuring, like you say, how the snakes responded to that. This brings me to mind of, do you remember that documentary on the BBC ages ago with Ron Whittaker?
Yes.
What was that called? Can you remember?
It was a number of snake bites, right? It's
was it 1 million snake bites?
1 million snake bites, maybe. Yeah.
No, that was a different documentary, wasn't it? I thought
you're thinking of the rubber foot one, aren't you? With the
yeah.
Oh my gosh, the little vipery guy that's sand-coloured, whose name has exited my mind. Cerastes?
Yeah, no, it is 1 million snake bites. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. They're stepping on little Cerastes with a rubber foot.
Yeah, they were stepping on Cerastes, I think. Were they not also stepping on Russell's vipers, De Boyer?
Oh, could have been Russell's. Yep, could have been Russell's viper. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, they were stamping on them with the rubber foot. And the headline was like, hey, actually, like, they don't always bite when you do that.
They're pretty clumsy.
Chill. They kind of,
it's a lot of bluff bites.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, whoa, like, there's a lot of video when we're talking about 1 million snake bites, the documentary. A lot of those videos, it seemed like the snake was a little bit startled. The snake just looked rattled. Like, it wasn't defensive or aggressive. It was just like freaked out. Like,
well, yeah, it was.
I was just relaxing here. Someone was trotting on me.
All muscles go. Get the hell out.
Literally, they just sort of ping.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the kind of thought behind this paper: is like, right, are snakes more likely to bite? The things they were looking at were things like daytime, nighttime,
temperature,
juvenile, adults, temperature. How do all these things affect the likelihood of snakes biting? And I guess should we just get into it?
I think so. I mean, the long and short of it is they basically threw it all in a big model and saw what came out the other end and describe what influences and what interacts too. I think that's what makes the analysis sort of hard to follow in places, is that you've got things like, we'll work with an example of bite probability, and in relation to size, it tended to be bigger snakes were less likely to bite in both males and females in general when they were stepped on. But if it was a male snake at night, the larger ones were slightly more likely to bite. But by and large, it was larger snakes were less likely to bite.
Yeah.
So you have these
Yeah.
weird interactions where if it makes the job of trying to take this model or take these results and use it quite difficult, because you've got these sort of contradictory results. I mean, they're not contradictory, but there's a lot of factors that interplay together to actually give you the correct sort of bite probability in a given scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can start off by saying some sort of more general things as well.
Yes.
Like, one thing that was really obvious was that where you touched the snake on the body mattered. Snakes were much more likely to bite defensively if they were touched on the head as compared to the mid-body or tail. And they say that the likelihood is because snakes associate being touched on the head with predation. Like, predators will go for the head.
It's high stakes, but it's high reward if you're going to go for a venomous snake, you need to disable the most dangerous part of it. So you can imagine a bird of prey or something is just going to go straight and try and get the job done instantly. Yeah,
and snakes obviously are keenly aware of that on some level, and so they're most defensive if their heads are touched. They're most likely to bite. They also found that broadly the juveniles were more likely to bite than adults, right?
Yes. Well, juveniles, but even more so newborns.
Right.
Yeah.
So newborns were much more likely to react with a defensive bite than adults.
Yes.
Which I guess you could put down to either the juveniles being the most vulnerable to predation, so they're just like, they're hot, like they're ready to go. If you're going to try and peck one of these things, you're going to get got. They also say that their venom is more effective on birds than the venom of the adults, despite the fact that neither group really eats birds.
Yes, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because if they're not eating it, that kind of really suggests that it's a defensive ontogenetic change. We've talked about ontogenetic changes, so as they're aging, changing diet and things in snakes quite frequently, and that makes sense because as you grow up, you need to eat bigger things in the case of snakes, and so you're going to grow out of eating invertebrates maybe and grow into eating larger frogs or like fish or something. But the fact that they're not as likely to eat birds, I don't know. That seems like a defensive adaptation, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does. The fact that their venom really is effective on birds when they're young, and they're most likely to get eaten by birds. Yeah, it is a bit of a nod to defensive function of venom, which is really cool, and something which is still really, in the case of snakes, really being explored. It's in its infancy, the understanding of venom as a defensive mechanism. Like, even relatively recently, people would just say there is no defensive function of venom in snakes. But I think that the curtain's kind of being peeled back on that now, and this is a neat little case where maybe their venom is good for defensive. They also found that I think you alluded to males at night preferring it cooler. They're more likely to bite if it's cooler at night. Was that right? It was some crazy thing.
I was talking about the sizes, but there is a temperature one with So as temperature increases at night, females get more likely to bite, whereas males get less likely to bite.
That's really
these
curious,
two sort of
it?
counter. Yeah, they feel counter, but Whereas in the morning, tends to be higher temperatures more likely to bite for both.
Right.
And not really a difference
weird
between the sexes, to be honest.
Yeah. So I guess really in terms of like managing snakebite or trying to deter snakebite, what have they learned here? I guess the thing about the juveniles being more likely to bite is quite interesting.
Yep. And I think it's quite actionable
quite
too,
valuable.
Right? I think this is the bit that I was sort of alluding to before. It wasn't necessarily why you're looking this, you can't apply it. It's more there are aspects of this model that are a lot easier to translate to, hey, watch out for snakes during this time of year. If there are more post nesting, you'd expect there to be newborn snakes around, more likely to bite. Heightened awareness of snakes during that time might be an effective sort of strategy to mitigate snakebite. Whereas something like, watch out for females at night when the temperature's above 20 degrees is a lot harder to sort of work with, especially because you're not going to know the sex of the snake too. So things like that can be a little bit trickier to see how it would be helpful in the field, but it does really hint at something interesting going on in terms of their ecology there. And I suppose if you knew the sex ratios of a given population or something along those lines, you could highlight areas that were higher risk or lower risk.
Yeah. It is very strange how differently the males and females react to temperature. Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's some kind of like partitioning about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like females, as it gets warmer at night, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know why that might be. That's really curious. Did they come up with any ideas as to why that might be?
I don't remember seeing anything, because I think they sort of, so the second half of the paper, they do go on to sort of translate these findings and compare them to actual records of snakebite in the sort of Sao Paulo area.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really cool sort of way of verifying the lab studies. Is to, all right, well, if there's areas that are warmer and there's areas that are cooler, we should see that temperature effect in the actual data of snake bites per. I think they had per 100,000 people, and I think they pretty much do see that with the coastal areas being warmer and potentially with smaller snakes as well. So these two sort of factors playing together to increase the snakebite instances along the coast in coastal areas compared to upland.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that is
what was also neat. They had data on the sort of overall population mean of the snakes in these areas, and they have size estimates for the ones that tend to bite people, and the ones that tend to be involved in the snake bites tend to be smaller than the overall population mean in these areas. So there is this skew towards smaller snakes being the ones that are getting involved in instances of snakebite, which is exactly what their models, their lab models of the the artificial stepping on the snake thing was telling them should be the case, and it seems to be backed up with the real snakebite data.
Yeah, it's nice that they managed to ground truth it in that way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Really, I mean, it's really, really cool that it sort of all tallies up.
Yeah, I had a quick look at the paper again to see if they had an answer for why the males are less likely to bite as it gets hotter. And apparently it's because their locomotor capacities are greater, so they're better at moving away, they're better at escaping. But then that doesn't make sense as to why the females would show the opposite or not show the same.
I don't know. Females are overall larger than the males, so maybe there's a sort of diminishing returns at a certain point, that they're sort of too big to get away quickly, maybe. But
yeah, that could be it.
There's some pretty sizable overlap in the SVL lengths between male and female. So
but they're probably a lot more heavy-bodied.
Maybe.
So it could be that, like you say, once the females are getting massive, they're just not sprightly enough to use that. They're just better off biting as a defense. That's interesting. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Or there's some sort of, maybe I don't know. This is a bit of a stretch. These are egg-laying snakes, correct?
No, they're live birth.
They're live birth. I was just wondering if there was a sort of connection to a certain area that they didn't want to leave and therefore were less likely to sort of bail on a location. But if they're live birth, I doubt that would be the case, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one. It's an intriguing one. I think it's also the sort of least helpful when applying to sort of trying to predict areas of snakebite. So in that case, it almost doesn't. It's super cool from the ecology point, but less practical.
Yeah, it doesn't really help. It's just confusing if you. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. Well, there we go. Bothrops jararaca, the lance head. Yeah, a really thorough paper about how we could sort of use this to try and, or how important it is to understand snakebite from the snake's perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a paper that just kept on giving. Really, it was really cool.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, super impressed with that one.
So, Ben, have you got any other business this week?
Nah, as per usual, I have absolutely nothing.
Okay, well, we had an email from Llewellyn, long-time friend of the podcast. So Llewellyn said, "Thank you for yet another great episode. I've been listening for a long time." Yep, I know. Near the end of episode 193, an incident in which a young woman fought off a crocodile after it attacked her sister is mentioned, and Ben, I think, wondered if the American crocodile occurred that far south. So Llewellyn says, "I am not a crocodile expert, but it is my understanding that the American crocodile can be found in Mexico, as well as further south in Central America and northerly portions of South America." So, the crocodile mentioned at the end of episode 193, fought off by the young lady who received the King's Gallantry Medal, could have been an American crocodile, or, of course, the Moralettes crocodile. And then spectacled
Okay.
caiman can also be found in Mexico, but let's ignore that due to their smaller size and the rarity
Right,
of them biting
that's
people.
why I think I brought it up, because I was thinking of like South African crocs and crocodilians. I was thinking of all these like little guys.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be too much of a problem, I doubt.
Yeah, and then Llewellyn went on to say, on the sadly defunct podcast Croclog, Brandon Seidlow would cover croc attacks in Mexico. He noted that both the American and Moralettes crocodiles were relatively unlikely to attack compared to other crocodiles, but attacks did occur. He also mentioned that it was common for people to feed crocodiles, especially in areas where tourists came to see them. Classic.
Classic,
and then Llewellyn shared this list of fatal croc incidents, which was compiled by Brandon Seidlow and colleagues in Mexico. And I opened it up and had a look. And this is fatal crocodile attacks in Mexico from 2010 till present. Care to guess how many there have been, Ben?
In 14 years.
In 14 years, in Mexico alone, how many fatal crocodile attacks?
Gosh, I'm a bit unsafe. I'm going to go with 25.
That's a good guess, mate. 28, one of which could have been a shark. So you're almost spot on.
Okay. So basically, a sort of couple a year.
Yeah, couple a year. Yeah, on average. 2015 was a big year, though. They were like 6 in 2015.
Wonder if it was like an El Nino year or something.
Maybe, but yeah, it seems to mostly be the American crocodile. Although the Moraletti is probably about a third of them.
So it's hard to tell what that. Basically, our question of which crocodile could it be? We've got a choice of two, but maybe a 60-40% chance towards
so
American.
It was most likely Morelette's crocodile, but it could have been the American crocodile. Either way, sisters swimming around, one of them gets attacked by a crocodile, the other one beat the sense out of the crocodile. Heroic. They earned the gallantry medal. Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting though. That's some good info.
It is only gallant to beat on a reptile if it's trying to eat your sister, though. You can't just expect to get this kind of medal if you start the altercation.
No, you get some sort of anti medal in that case. The crocodile gets a medal.
The crocodile gets a medal for putting up with it. But yeah, any other business beyond that? I don't think I had anything. Oh yeah, no, I did want to mention this, Ben. So I saw this paper a few weeks ago in iScience, and apparently the title of the paper is "Acute Exposure to Caffeine Improves Foraging in an Invasive Ant." And basically, if you give ants caffeine in like medium doses, they are more efficient in going to get food. They take straighter paths to get to their destination. There's less dilly-dallying.
That's okay.
So yeah, basically caffeine sort of works with ants, is the news.
But they might have horrible side effects that we're unaware of.
Yeah, maybe. But if they're contributing more to the hive, who cares about the side effects for the workers, mate? The ants, that's ant vibes. Like, they don't care. It's all for the whole, for the hive. So
the greater good.
Yeah, I think if ants could manufacture caffeine and feed it to their workers, they would do it in a heartbeat if it meant increased efficiency.
Huh. I mean, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ants aren't that different from us.
They've got probably some kind of nervous system that forges connections and drives things around like us, right? Yeah. Well, they're not fungus, so they must do.
They're not fungus.
So yeah, that's it from us though. I don't think I've got anything else to add unless you have.
Nope. No, I think that's cool. I think that's us.
So yeah, just to say thank you to all our Patreons, patreon.com/herphighlights. If you want to get in touch with us, Gmail, you can, herphighlights@gmail.com. Yeah, I think all that remains to be said is thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.